You've already gotten a little taste. This is Kevin, our special speaker this morning. I'd like to thank Scotty for making arrangements for him to come. I've been announcing him past several weeks, so you know some things about him. I'm not going to say those things. I'll say what I said at 8 o'clock. You have the opportunity of listening to a man who loves the Lord and who loves those who are the most vulnerable around the world and brings the message of good news and of healing. So I invite you to give him your attention, your prayers, and your heart. Kevin, please.
Thank you. I am amazingly humbled to be able to be here with all of you today. I don't get this opportunity in my life very often I stay on the road quite a bit. I was on the road I was home last year for 11 days last year. So I spent a lot of time on the road. And one of the things that I miss the most is this opportunity to gather with other people of faith and to be able to have that fellowship. It's tough sometimes just in your hotel room to feel that connection back to the family of God. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that I get to just share my story with you for a few moments. I grew up in the South. So I want to thank you as the state of Wisconsin for sharing all of your weather with me this week. I've been working down in Oshkosh for the last week with some really amazing people in the school district, in the hospital system there. And when I arrived last Sunday into Wisconsin, it was 41 degrees. And I've experienced -3. And -15 wind chill factors. And then yesterday, I got to see snow and ice. And it was awesome driving in this morning from Oshkosh. So if I had thought, I probably would have rented a big SUV sort of thing. But no, I got a Kia. One good blast of wind and the car goes right off the road. So it was nice to actually make it to the parking lot. This was the most scraped thing I've driven on all morning, was the parking lot of the church. So I grew up in the South. I grew up in Mississippi, deep in the South, where going to church was a part of the culture. That's what you do in the South. You get up and you go to church. I stayed in the South until I started in junior high school. And so every Sunday morning, my family got up, we got dressed, and we all went off to church. And church was as much a social event as it was a worship event for us. It wasn't until I got to, we left Mississippi when I was in junior high and moved to the northwest corner of Indiana. And when I got to Indiana, we fell out of going to church. It's a new community, settling back into our lives in a new town. And my grandmother, when I was probably starting high school, my grandmother invited me to come back to church with her. Thank God for grandmothers. So I started going back to church with my grandmother, and I was always a good kid, growing up in church, I was always a good kid. And it was when I started going back to church in Indiana that I realized something. That in spite of all the goodness and all of the way that I viewed myself, that I had fallen very short of what God's expectations of holiness and righteousness were for me. And it was because of my grandmother that I heard that I moved from having a relationship with church to having a relationship with God. Two completely different things. As a junior in high school, I came to the realization that I believed, that I accepted for me, that Jesus Christ was the only way that I was going to have forgiveness of sins. For me, it wasn't about going to heaven. It's a nice perk, right? but that's not what it was about. For me, and I think for all of us, it's about entering into that personal relationship with the God of the universe who loves us so much for who we are. I moved from that relationship to church to that relationship with God, and everything in my life changed. Now, you already know I'm a magician. an illusionist, whatever word you want to use there. And when I had studied music all the way through my high school years, and then this magician came on television, Doug Henning. Some of you may remember Doug Henning. And Doug was this amazing guy that no longer was in tuxedos on dark stages with booming voices doing magic tricks with birds. Doug was the exact opposite of that, right? He was the rainbows and unicorns and buck teeth and long hair. And he was this hippie guy that came out on the stage and was like, hey, it's the world of illusion. That just brought me in. There was something about that just attracted me. And so I decided that I wanted to become a professional illusionist, a professional magician. Now, growing up in the church, you hear it, I was told by very well-meaning Christians, God doesn't like magic tricks. And I was given all the verses why God doesn't like magic tricks. And I especially remember the one, with the apostles talking to Simon, the magician, in the book of Acts, right? But that's not what I do. You can't confuse anything that I do with anything that's magical. They're just a series of tricks. And so the more I started to explore that in the Bible, the more I realized that while these well-meaning Christians were warning me about the evils that could come my way, that was not what the Bible was talking about. But I did find two verses that changed everything for me. The first one, both of these are verses we've always heard. Psalms 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. Now, in our Western culture, it's real easy to look at those verses and say, so, if I delight myself in the Lord, he's going to make me rich. If I delight myself in the Lord, he's going to give me that new car. If I delight myself in the Lord, he's going to help me with that college exam. That's possible. But I think the essence of these verses are, if you delight yourself in those things that are important and of eternal significance to God, he takes our desires and parallels them with his desires. So my prayer to God was, this is where I want to be. I want to be in this world of entertainment, this world of the performing arts. And if this is not where you want me to be, change my heart. Change my desires, because I want to please you in my life. It led me to this very clear fact in high school, that God wants his children in all aspects of life, in every area of life. One of my favorite verses, the Apostle Paul speaks to the Romans in Romans 12, and he says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. I like this translation of it. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. At that moment, I knew I was okay entering this world of entertainment because God needs his children everywhere. So my wife and I, who I met, I was living in just outside of Chicago. I had come after I finished school, and I decided that I was going to enter this world of entertainment. What better place than Chicago, right? Because they had Bozo Circus. So, and there was always a magician on Bozo Circus every week. So I thought, I'm going to go to, somebody recognizes Bozo Circus. I see the clapping there. That's good. So I decided to move back to Chicago. And then my college roommate called me, and he was living in Dallas at the time, finishing up a television degree. And he goes, I think you should come to Dallas. It's a great city. It's warmer than Chicago. And it's booming down here right now. So I moved to Dallas to begin putting my show together. And I would work during the week in a mall, managing a clothing store, and on the weekends I would run out and I would do magic shows on the weekend. And my roommate, who invited me down, would come along and he would run sound for me to make sure I could be heard. And his fiance would come along, and she would sit with him at the table. One day she says to me, you know what? I'm here all the time. If you ever need any help, you should let me come up and help you out on the stage. It'll make you a little more organized. She's now my wife. So I married my sound man's fiance. We're still really good friends. And they came to a very mutual parting of the ways, realizing that as much as they loved each other, they would probably be better as friends rather than husband and wife, which was perfect for me because I fell in love with my best friend and ended up marrying my best friend. And we've had the privilege of spending the last 35 years of our lives together. So it's been an amazing adventure for us. We entered this world of entertainment together. It was great. We had achieved significant amount of success. We were working in the college market, performing on college campuses through student activities. We won Campus Entertainer of the Year twice, beat out Garth Brooks one year for that. It's pretty nice. We were named Performing Arts Entertainers of the Year 6 years in a row. We had all of this success, all of these awards, and then everything changed. I was driving at home in a car, stopped at a stoplight. Tractor trailer came off the interstate and didn't realize I was there. Slammed into the back of my car. Crushed me inside the car. I woke up in neurological intensive care with a closed brain injury and a lower spinal cord injury, and spent the next year of my life in the hospital and rehab, working very, very hard to regain all the skills that I'd lost as a result of that accident. And in my heart, I cried out to God, how is this good? I've done everything to try to serve you. How is this good? And I was reminded of Romans, again, the words of Paul saying, all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And yet I laid in that hospital wondering how this was good. It was a difficult time. It was probably the most challenging time for us. And it made me ask lots of questions. How do I define myself? Was my life defined because I was a successful performer? Was my life defined because I was married and had a great relationship? Was my life defined because I had this financial success that was happening? And it made me really take a step back and go, my life is not defined by my skills, my abilities, my success. My life is defined because of my position in Christ. That's where I get my meaning. All of the rest of it is superficial. The second thing I learned as a result of that accident, I became more keenly aware of what people with disabilities deal with every single day of their life. What those challenges are like, not just for them, but how society perceives them, how we limit who they are. As a society, I have learned that people with disabilities, oh my gosh, they have, and I like to refer to them as people with abilities different than our own, because each one of us is gifted by God with talents and abilities that he wants to use in his service. And so as I started to work with that population, one of the things, as a result of that accident, I was able to grab all my skills as a magician, all these simple little magic tricks I used to do as a little boy. I took those back into a hospital system, met with a series of therapists, and we collaborated on a really cool program that uses simple little magic tricks as a form of therapy to help clients regain their motor skills and their cognitive skills in a fun and motivating way. Now, I don't know if you've ever been through therapy, but if you have, you know what it's like to pick those marbles up and drop them in a glass. Take that peg and put it in a board. Hit that balloon over the top of your head. Does that sound like a really fun, exciting thing? Not exactly. But if I can teach you a magic trick that incorporates all of those same skills and processes, that would be pretty cool. I can remember I started working in the hospital and I had a grandfather say to me, I can't wait to learn this magic trick because my grandkids are coming to visit me this weekend. And what would I rather say to them? Hey, watch Grandpa put these pegs in a board. Or let Grandpa show you a magic trick. As a result of what was such a tragic, what we viewed as such a tragic event in our lives, God took all of that, turned it around, and today that program, which we call Healing of Magic, that program is endorsed by the American Occupational Therapy Association as an authentic method of achieving therapeutic goals, and today it's in about 2,500 hospitals and rehab centers in more than 30 countries around the world. I think sometimes when we think about magic, we think of it like a comic book, where a guy in a cape twirls his mustache, throws his hand, there's a giant puff of smoke, and something magical happens on the stage. Which is why I'm so excited to be here in front of all of you today, because those of us who grew up in magic, we know what it's all about. It is the lure of knowing a secret, having a special talent, being able to attract an audience, tell a story, offer something exotic and interesting, like this little box. When I was growing up, every magic trick looked sort of like this, a fancy painted box. And when we wanted to make it really special, really magical, we put dragons on the side. Or we'd paint Chinese characters all over it, because that meant it came from someplace far, far away, had special magical powers. Kids. I wanted to show you all of you this little box because it reminds me of so many of my friends, so many of the people I've come to know who have abilities different than the rest of us. Those who have been placed inside the box by the people around them. The ones who don't quite fit in because as a society, we have already decided the size and the shape of the box so that everybody fits so nice and neatly on the same size shelf. Of course, those of us who are touched by people with abilities different than our own understand that problem. As long as we, as a society, as a culture, as a church, as long as we keep defining this box, only certain things are going to fit inside. Of course, those of us who work with people with disabilities, we understand that problem. As long as we keep defining this box, only certain things will fit inside. Well, maybe we've had it backwards, twisted, upside down. Maybe it's not about the people at all, but our perspective that changes everything. Sometimes it takes something just that simple to get you to look at things in a different way. And now maybe you also understand the appeal of magic and why kids, all kids, big kids, little kids, old kids, find these things to be exotic and interesting, special and magical. One thing that I have learned in my walk is to ignore the box, to disregard that outside container, because God looks at all of us the very same way. I think one of the most powerful things for me over the last few years is God is giving me this opportunity to really take my ministry, and I do consider it a ministry around the world. Between now and May, I have the opportunity to work in Nicaragua, Sweden, Germany, Poland, and Latvia. Starting in May, I'll be in Ireland, Norway, Liberia, and Uganda. And it's because of the magic. It's because of this love for an art form that I have that God has opened up all of these amazing opportunities and doors for me. I've also learned something else. As much as I love my work, service isn't about what I get to do for God. It's about what God does through me. And when you look at it that way, I don't have to worry about my skill level. I don't have to worry about my abilities, because my confidence isn't in me, it's in God. And God works through us. That's what it means as a group of believers, right? That God works through us to impact our world. I think I can sum it up best in the words of the prophet Micah, who left us with these very simple things that said, if you want to please God, 3 things. Do justice. Treat everybody as though in the same way that God would. Every single one of us is created by God to be a unique and amazing individual. Do justice. Love mercy. Because all of us are the recipients of the undeserving, unmerited love of God. Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly. Just like Jesus Christ, who gave up everything to come to earth, to become a man, to die on a cross for us. Do justice. Love mercy. Walk humbly. Thank you very much for letting me share with you this morning.